Hello and welcome to the Bend Like Bamboo Resilience Show. To bend like bamboo is to master change with flexibility. And on the show, I get to interview very special guests all about resilience and how to master it in our minds, in our bodies, and in our lives. And today I have a very special guest introducing the beautiful Terri Vinson. Hi, Terri.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. Hello, how are you?
I'm really well. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to have a chat and talk about such a wonderful topic of resilience.
Thank you. Please let me introduce you properly. So, Terri is an Australian skin scientist, cosmetic chemist, entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and author. Terri is dedicated to helping people feel empowered, informed, and confident when it comes to their skincare choices through multi-level education and by creating her cosmeceutical skincare range, Synergie Skin. As the founder and formulator of her Australian-based global skincare company, she formulates her own line of active cosmeceuticals and intelligent mineral makeup, all in accordance to her trademarked clean science philosophy, which we have to dive into. This is going to be so juicy. Having built the vertically integrated business from the ground up, she has worked tirelessly to create safe and ethical products aimed to protect, change, and nurture the skin for long-term results, optimal dermal health, and to unleash confidence from within. Amazing. I love your skincare range, Terri.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. Well, I've been doing it for a while, and I must say it gives me a reason to get up every morning. Absolutely love what I do.
Yeah, you do. It's your baby. I've had the pleasure of
Yeah, it
visiting
is.
your team in your office, in your beautiful big warehouse where you create everything from scratch. It's the real deal.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
that's
is, it
awesome.
is, and my team are just incredible. And
Yeah.
I honestly, they make me look good, even with to doing podcasts and helping me getting these little ring lights and things like that. So it's all, like I'm very blessed. I have the most wonderful team around me.
You do. And I was very lucky to do one of my workshops with your team, and it just felt like a family when I was around you all. You
Yeah.
are all very connected, aren't you?
Yeah, and we're pretty raw and honest. I think that's a secret. Families have the great times, families have the hard times.
Yeah.
And I think when you really get down into it, you realize that we are a family and we behave like one, and it's full of elation, but there's also some tricky times. And I'm sure we've all gone through that in the last few months with what's going on in the world. So yeah, we get through it.
Absolutely. And you know what's been really inspiring is that
Yeah.
how you pivoted and how you, because you create your own products, you created hand sanitizer, didn't you?
Yeah, so in at the start of the pandemic, I actually supply one of my major suppliers is in Hong Kong,
Mm,
and as we know, Hong Kong was hit with the pandemic initially, and I was making
mm,
sanitizers small scale for our lab to keep things sanitized on the benches, and my customer said, "Could you make it for us?" So I was selling hundreds of litres to them at the time, just shipping it across the border from Melbourne, Australia to Hong Kong. And then it hit Australia, and then I just had to focus on us.
yeah.
So the other great thing is that the minute this happened, we were an essential service, and it was so it made me feel like I was able to give my team that certainty, because I think through all of this, one of the biggest challenges to our mental health was the uncertainty of what the virus meant, what it meant to our business, what it meant to our relationships, our families. And to be able to myself give my team certainty that they had
Yeah.
a job because we were
Yeah.
making something that was going to keep people safer, meant so much to me. And I think
Oh,
that was the first part of me being able to get on with it and cope better in this situation.
yeah. Well, good on you. You worked out how you could be of best of service and you utilize the skills that you have. I saw you do that and I was like, well done. Well done. So it's very
Thank
you
you.
and
Yeah.
it's very inspiring. So let's dive in. What does resilience mean to you?
Um, it's a lot of things, really. I think for me, it's a thing is about probably tenacity and that grittiness. And I watched a TED talk years ago that really resonated with me. And they were doing a study on children, and they were trying to figure out what made children resilient.
Mm,
And it wasn't about intelligence. It wasn't about the socioeconomic background. It wasn't about any of that. It was just plain determination and what we call grittiness. And I think
Mm,
for me, it's that never give up attitude and
yeah.
probably eternal but realistic optimism. For me, I'm an optimist in a pragmatic way. I'm not the world. I don't believe the world is roses and lavender,
Yeah.
but I believe that you can make the best out of every situation, and no matter how bad it is, you will find the good in it later.
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true.
Mm.
Wow. How was lockdown for you?
Initially, it was a shock because I'm a very social person,
Yeah.
and disconnecting with my friends, and initially with my children for a little while, was really confronting.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm very fortunate to have a beautiful partner, and we obviously locked down together.
Yeah.
For us, we decided what we couldn't change, we wouldn't worry about. What we could change, we would affect.
Yeah.
And for us, it was let's eat really well, let's exercise, and let's make the most of every opportunity with our businesses and stay
Awesome.
connected, obviously, as we all do via Zoom. So, but it was
Yeah.
really tough. And then I
Yeah.
remember there was a weekend where, again, this was acquiring ethanol to make the sanitizer. I couldn't find it because
Yeah.
everybody was getting it, and there was shipping problems and everything. So
Yeah.
I was very concerned about the business and everything, but hard. It was hard, but
Yeah.
you get it's a new normal. You have to get used to it,
Yeah.
and I think your mindset not being you have to lean into it
Yeah.
rather than give up.
I
And
love
I think
that.
that's
Lean
how I
into
coped.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes, well, often, usually what we fear is, the thought processes and anticipating the future and being fearful of it takes up so much energy. And often most of that doesn't happen anyway. So it's good to,
Exactly. And you know what I find, sorry, I find with these times, it's the the thoughts get us into a state.
yes.
And when and I've had this situation with very close friends, they get themselves into a state
Yeah.
almost like a spiral, and I've done it too in the past.
Yeah.
And you've got to remember these are thoughts.
Yeah.
Thoughts can't kill you. Thoughts can't hurt you.
Yeah.
And if you can harness those thoughts, and actually channel them, you'll come out the other side. It's easy.
Absolutely.
I know it's sometimes easy to say that, but if at the time you can channel and harness them, it's
Well, I
great.
think that morning routines and even evening routines are a really great way of creating our state and being
Yeah.
intentional about it. Yeah.
Exactly. And, I would go for a run in the morning,
Yeah.
and always try and make myself a beautiful breakfast, make
Yeah.
sure I was eating well,
Yeah.
and have that routine, and not lie in bed and think, oh, well, I'll just watch Netflix till 7 o'clock tonight. And that wasn't, I knew that wouldn't be helpful. So I was determined not to do that.
Yeah. Good on you. Well,
Mind you, I do love Netflix.
thank gosh for Netflix during this
I know.
year.
Oh, thank God. I mean, that was definitely 2 hours of sanity every day, but it wasn't all
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. It was nice
Yeah.
to sort of do a few
Yeah.
binges. So whether it was Foxtel
Oh,
binge or
yes.
Stan or Netflix, yeah. But yeah, you can't do
Yeah.
too much of it
Yeah.
because
Loved it.
lying down and just, yeah, you can create this fantasy world and then you lose track of your own world and you just need to kind of, a balance is the key, isn't it? I would love
It's
you to
yeah.
share a story of something you've been through, Terri, that you've had to overcome in your life.
I'm sure, look, we've all got stories where we've had to rebound from really tough times. Um, I think for me, the thing that really stands out was, at the age of 12, I always felt a little bit of a misfit in my life as a child. I just didn't know where I belonged. I was really, really close to my dad.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I wasn't close to my mum.
Yeah.
Mum had some severe mental health issues, and I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was 12 years of age, and I was listening to them argue, and my father was saying, you need to tell her, and my mother was saying, no, I won't tell her. And I was wondering what this was they were talking about. And within a few minutes, I discovered that my father wanted my mother to tell me that I was adopted. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, okay, this is wow, and it was a surprise, but I wasn't devastated, I wasn't shocked, and I needed to deal with that. And I walked into the room, and I said to mum and dad, It's okay to come clean. You know, I was 12 years of age. I said, I know what you
Wow.
said. I'm adopted. Can you just be honest with me and let
Yeah.
me know the details? Dad didn't like confrontation, so he kind of walked out of the room. And my mother just yelled out, "You're mine, you're mine." And I went into my room. She sat down on the bed and started crying. And I spent the rest of the night consoling my mother, trying to make her think it's okay, I'm still yours. And it was like an elephant in the room. And the next morning, she said to Dad at breakfast, when she wakes up, she won't be my daughter anymore. So I spent my whole, I remember my mission from that moment on was to make them realize that I was still their daughter, or else I felt like they were going to reject me or I'd be rejected again. So it was a bit of a, I felt like I was trying to overplease them, and particularly Mum. And Mum had, look, I look back on it now, and Mum wasn't well. And I think I was upset with her for many years, but I have to be kinder to what she was going through. But there was a moment in my life where I was trying to belong, and it took me a long time to overcome that and realize that I was enough for myself, and I didn't need to be wanted by somebody else to have validation.
Wow.
And yeah, and I think I stopped being a child from that moment, and that's okay. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of people have things happen to them as kids, and they have to grow up really quickly.
Yeah.
But that was my signal to really grow up and to really get into my life. I felt like when I looked behind me as an adoptee, and I don't know if other adoptees have this feeling, but sometimes you look behind you and there is nothing there.
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't then. There is now. I've got to say there is now, because I've still since found a wonderful family. But I felt like I was just planted on this earth to move forward,
Yeah.
and I had to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I had this absolute overwhelming. It was like a drive in me from the age of 12 to do something with my life, and I didn't know what that was. And in fact, I didn't even really find out what that was until I was in my 40s.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was a driving force. And so I think for me it was realizing that I was here for a purpose,
Mm.
and to get on with it, and to also, and I think I realized this a few years later, don't make what's happened to me my story. It's part of my identity, but I'm not going to make it my whole life identity.
Yeah.
And I think we can often, with things that have happened, trauma, abuse, we can make that our whole identity, rather
Yeah.
than making it a part of what we've been through. And blaming my mother, blaming my this, blaming my that for what's become of me. That's not helpful either, because
No.
the only thing that we can affect is ourselves. We have the ability to change. We have
Yes.
the ability to be fluid and elastic in our mind and our bodies, and bend
Yes.
like bamboo, which is what you do.
Yes.
We have that ability. So only we can do that, and we can't rely on others, and we can't blame others. So
Yeah.
I think for me, resilience has been shifting, not blaming, getting on with life, and having that absolute tenacity and that sort of grittiness to move
It's
forward.
empowering. When we take responsibility, it's empowering. And when we can see, I can imagine as a child, it sounds like you had to hold the space there for your mum and dad when you overheard that you were adopted, and they were finding it hard to communicate that to you, and their perception of how that would make you feel and all the things that would change. So I imagine that would have been hard and traumatic for you to have to hold that space. But I can also see how it became a gift, because you learned how to hold the space and therefore just get on with it. And that's why you probably felt like from that moment, I was not a child anymore. I became an adult. And that's a lot to take onto your shoulders, but that it makes so much sense now, when I see what you've achieved and how you go about everyday life and your business and growth, and everything that you do is all about, you do have a firm belief in yourself. And that came perhaps from
Yeah.
that experience.
I think I had to. I had to
Yeah.
believe in myself,
Yeah.
and I had to be. I had to be really self-reliant from that moment onwards.
Yeah.
And I don't. I don't believe that we're an island. Human beings are social. We need others, and I love people. I would describe myself as an extrovert, but we can't we can want others, but we shouldn't need others to give us identity. So yeah, it was a gift. And I also realized that it was hard for them too. So you think about it, I was born in 1963. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the 60s, the whole identity of a woman was to get married and have babies. It's very different now,
Yeah.
thankfully, really different now.
Yeah.
But my mother, as unwell as she was, lost her identity. She felt that it was her identity to be able to have a child, and she couldn't. So it was a secret. And
Yes.
she thought that if the secret unraveled, she wouldn't be perceived as being a whole person or a whole woman. So there was all that stuff. I wasn't old enough, I think, at the age of 12 to get that. And I think now in my 50s, I so get what she would have been going through. And I
Absolutely.
think having developed compassion for her rather than anger, which I held for a long time, has really helped with my getting perspective on the situation and being
Absolutely.
okay with it and saying that, okay, that was part of it, but just move on, Terry. You've got lots to do now.
Do you know what else is really inspiring about you is, you brought it up briefly just before, and you've told me this when we've caught up together, is, you really found your calling and what you're doing now in your 40s when, you had your kids, and then you had to, there was a time in your life where you had to create a business, and you just did what you knew, and you just went forward. Tell me about what
Yep,
happened
I
then.
did. Well, I was married quite young, and I met my ex-husband when I was only 22, so I was a baby. And I think I was in many ways grateful for him because I grew up with him, but our paths diverged greatly over the years. And I think relationships, I think I didn't know how to have a good relationship, and I think I also need to own that. I
Yeah.
was really young,
Yeah.
and we started off there and we went like that, and we didn't know how to come back like that. We hadn't figured it out. And I had to take the reins for the family and financially for a while. And I loved the science and I loved the beauty industry. And I started actually working for a cosmeceutical company as their educator and doing some formulations for them.
Yeah.
The family wasn't in dire financial straits at that point, but fairly soon on that situation occurred, and my ex-husband hadn't worked for a number of years, so I really, really needed to step up.
Yes.
So I had $40,000 saved, and this was in my late 30s, early 40s. Yeah, late 30s, I had the money saved for over the years, doing various things, part-time work, emergency science teaching when the kids were babies.
Yeah.
And I remember going to him and saying, I'm going to start a skin clinic. And I'm going to start formulating products because I knew that this was what I needed to do. And he didn't believe I could do it. He was a bit shocked, and he said, with what money? And I said, look, I've saved $40,000. And he said, okay, well, good luck with that. There was a bit more of a conversation than ensued, but basically I don't think he had full belief in what I could do, and that's okay. Maybe, I did, I believe what I could do, but maybe many people wouldn't have. And that gave me more determination, because when someone says to you, you can't do this, or good luck with that, it's like, I'll show you.
It's just
So
their
I
stuff,
opened this
isn't it?
clinic in
Yeah.
Melbourne.
Yeah.
It's their stuff.
It's
It's
their
his stuff, and
stuff.
and yeah. So he stayed doing what he was doing. I started doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And look, I must admit, there was hardly any clients in the first few months, and I thought, Terry, what have you done? You're crazy. And all I was doing was formulating products and waiting for customers.
Yeah.
And I did the skin consults as well, and it soon took off, and the skincare became a cult following, to the point where the recession hit, or the GFC hit. People weren't having treatments, they weren't having hair removal, but they couldn't not have my products. They loved them.
Yeah.
And I realized, wow, I'm onto something here.
Yeah.
What am I doing? I'm not a beauty therapist. I'm not an injecting nurse doing Botox, but I can make skincare.
Yeah.
So I literally gave my database away to a beauty salon, found a premises in Burwood, and set up my own laboratory and started making Synergie, and everything headed north from there on.
Oh yeah. And you went global, and
So
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was organic. I've got to say, it wasn't. I wasn't, banging on to get it global from day one, but it kind of grew
Yeah.
because of people's belief in the product
Yeah.
and my philosophy. I think people, they don't only buy a product, they buy what their brand's ethics and
The why.
that's so important to me.
Yeah.
The why. Yep.
Yeah, that's what inspired me
Yeah.
about you when I first laid eyes on you at the Business Chicks convention and you were speaking. And I
Yep.
just loved your story and your conviction and your belief in your brand and why you do what you do. And yeah, I think it's really important, really important.
I also think, being a little bit of a nerdy schoolgirl, and I was, schoolgirls, they're not nice to each other, particularly back in the 70s. And I was a victim of a little bit of teasing and bullying and the normal stuff, nothing huge. But I decided when I was 14 to have a bit of a self-improvement over Christmas situation where I got healthier. I, lost a little bit of puppy fat, came back to school in the February, and people were so different to me and treating me differently. And I'm thinking, that's so weird. I am the same
Yeah.
person. I'm that same nerdy girl that you teased last December, but I've just made a few little tweaks. And I thought, you know what? It's not even about the tweaks. It wasn't about how I looked. It was the shoulders were back, the confidence was up, I was owning it, and people were treating me differently because I felt better about myself.
100%.
And I think when I make Synergie products, I kind of want to do that for women and men, not only women, but men as well, to
Yes.
say, this is a product. Yes, this can maybe remove a bit of pigmentation or reduce lines or make you look well dewy, but it's not that.
Yeah.
It's about what it's going to make you feel inside.
That is right. And that is such a passion. And particularly when you're making beauty products, my twin sister also is in that game. And it's all about how people walk out smiling, feeling so much better about themselves.
Yes.
And I've never found another vitamin C and B and A, creams that work like yours do. Because I have
Oh,
really
thank
often
you,
bad
madam.
pigmentation, but it just all vanishes when I'm using your stuff. You're
I know,
obviously,
your skin's looking fabulous.
isn't it?
Because I
It's
haven't
your
seen you for so
stuff.
long because of COVID.
Yeah. No, you've just got
Thank
to be
you. Feeling
consistent,
good.
don't you? And I'm being much more
Mm.
mindful to make sure I wear a hat and, proper sunscreen every day. And it's important as you get older.
Very. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I know it. I've got things coming back to haunt me now. I used to sunbake when I was 18 and didn't know what it was like. We're talking
Yeah.
way back in the early 80s, and these little spots are coming up now, and it's like, wow, where are they coming from? So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
so I said to my daughter, who's in her mid-20s, I said, you are so lucky
Yeah.
that what you know now, and to protect yourself, because you'll
Yeah.
be reaping the benefits when you're my age.
Absolutely. And look at your skin. It's just immaculate.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Oh, thank you. Well, I do practice what I preach. It's like
Yes, you
brushing my
do.
teeth, skincare morning and night.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important and you got to be consistent. And I love this topic of self-esteem and confidence. I could actually write a whole book about it, or I could do an hour show on it. I just think it is so important how you feel about yourself. You elevate your, not only physically with your shoulders, you change how others feel around you.
Mm,
And it feels good. And so they want to feel good, and people automatically gravitate towards you like a magnet. More opportunities present themselves because it's almost like you're elevating to a different frequency, you're tapping into a different radio
yep.
station. And it changes your life, and it starts with how you feel about yourself, and that makes you kinder, which means you're going to also be more loving towards others.
And it's about an energy. And I wouldn't say I'm a religious person, but I'm definitely spiritual, and I
Yeah.
believe that things happen for a reason. And I also think that this also ties in with resilience.
Mm.
And every time I've had a setback in my life, whether it's been mega when I was 12, or when my marriage broke up, or just minor setbacks, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah,
And I truly believe that it's always going to make you stronger, and there will be a time and a place for the right thing to happen. And we just need to
absolutely.
leave that often up to whatever is out there, whether it's a God, or whether it's a universe, or whether it's energy. whatever that is to anybody,
Yeah.
the time is always right. And it's
Yeah.
not always up to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've got to learn to surrender and trust. And so
Yeah.
feeling good is a great way of doing that. And that's what I believe about flexibility is when we can be present in the moment, feeling good about ourselves, we let go of that survival program and, the stressful output
Mm-hmm.
of, adrenaline and cortisol. And then we can come out of that and the body can say, oh, I don't need to prioritize keeping her alive. We can actually now prioritize growth and repair. And it is all about feeling good to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
So tell me, when things were difficult before you turned the corner and, after what you discussed of what you went through with realizing you were adopted, when things were really difficult and perhaps in those moments where you felt like you've just transitioned from being a child to having to be more of an adult, holding the space, what was that like for you when it was really hard?
It was very dark and it was very lonely. And I did feel like and at the age of 12, I couldn't talk to anybody. And I think that had a huge impact on me. I wish I had have had the emotional maturity to reach out to a friend
Yeah.
and tell them, but I felt I was in a Catholic girls' school. To be adopted, there was baggage associated with that. There was possibly gossip, so I had to keep my mouth shut and get on with the thought processes in my own head and figure it out myself. But it was pretty dark,
Yeah.
and I remember holding a secret for quite a while until I told one of my best friends, and then it felt like I lifted
Yeah.
such a burden off my shoulders. I remember telling her, and she was fine. I don't know why I was so worried, but she was.
Yeah.
But
That's
yeah,
good.
initially it was hard, really hard. Yeah.
And then, so what was the turning point for you? Was it gradual or was there a moment where you just realized, like, how did you turn that around for yourself?
I think the point where I said, I've just got to get on, I'm here now, I've got to move forward. I remember that was a feeling I had, and it was very, very sudden. It
Yeah.
was almost like an epiphany. Um, and I was really young when I had that moment, but it's always been in me. And I've always had this, there is something here for you, Terri, there is something. And it's not, I'm not talking about fame and fortune. It is making my mark on this world. And an adoptee doesn't feel like they've made a mark on the world,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's having family. People, and I do hope people don't take it for granted, because it's so precious. Because I
Yeah.
have my own beautiful kids now, and I've still since found my family.
Yeah.
But when you find out I was an only child, I had parents that had essentially lied to me about being adopted
Yeah.
and had no one to talk to. So I felt so isolated,
Yeah.
and all I wanted was people to talk to and family, and that is just to be connected, is so important, and
Makes a
I
world of
can't stress that enough.
difference.
It doesn't necessarily, yeah,
Yeah.
and I wish I had have learnt the skills to connect when I first found that out, but now I do, and it's and I actually vent a lot more than others probably, but I think that's one of my ways of coping. If something's really bad, I find a friend, and I'll tell them,
Yeah.
and more often than not, there'll be a wonderful ear.
Wow. Yeah. That's a really important message to communicate, reach out, don't hold it in. Yeah. There will be a way to
Yeah.
connect. You will be accepted. Don't assume, don't assume. It's really,
Yeah, but the other thing is, don't drag them into a hole with you. I think if you're
yes.
feeling like you're in a bad place,
Yeah.
we need to understand that, yes, they're feelings, and why, and to kind of figure out why we're feeling the way we are. But if we can just vent and say, I'm feeling really crappy today because of X, Y, and Z. So if I'm a bit short with you, please understand. And then they may say why, and you can explain to them. But it's not about pulling them into this abyss, because nobody likes to be dragged into negativity either. So
Yeah.
we need to be
Absolutely.
mindful of the other person as well.
There's a
Yeah.
absolutely exact. There's a way of holding your own space and still being able to communicate how you're feeling. You're 100% right. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, you've already sort of really touched on this, but I wanted to ask you next how your life is better now, having gone through what you've gone through. And obviously, it's turned you into a doer, an entrepreneur, and a very successful lady. But what else?
I just feel that I have perspective.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the greatest gifts is doing it tough, makes you drink the success all the more. And I had this conversation with my son the other day, and we were talking about success, and success has many forms. And I certainly don't equate success with financial success. I equate success with having choices in life. Okay.
Yeah.
So to be in an opportunity where you have lots of choices, you have to have had adversity.
Yeah.
And at the time you may think you're in the absolute abyss, but that abyss, you need a contrast to realize what elation is. And I think we need, as mums and as friends and as partners, we shouldn't wrap our children, I'll particularly talk about my children, we shouldn't wrap our children up in cotton wool and tell them that they're amazing at everything. Be honest with them, that they need to have reality checks. And I'm probably going to get a few negative comments here, but I remember when my son was doing his final year at school, and he did particular painting for his art, and he said, "What do you think?" And most mothers, I suppose, might say, "Oh, it's wonderful." And I said, "Well, I just don't think it's balanced, darling." I said, "It's great. I love the colours here, and I love all these things about it, but I think that this is out of balance." And James, he said, "Mum, I disagree with you. It's fine. I put a lot of work in." I said, "I love it." I said, "But if you want my opinion, I think this thing should be brighter." I remember saying something about it. Anyway, I thought, whatever. Then anyway, the next week he'd fixed it or redone it to how I mentioned it. Anyway, he said, "Mum, I think you're right." And he said, "I need to be more open to criticism." And I think that's awesome. Something that I'm really proud that I've taught him to not be offended with criticism. And one of the big things I find is perspective in owning your stuff. And I think for me, I've learnt much better relationships with my partner, with my kids. Yeah. And I also really have to own my mistakes, because all that negativity makes you so much better in the future, in the positive stuff.
And it just feels more empowering, doesn't it, when you're able to own your stuff and, to it's all about taking responsibility. It's just so important to do that. And it's okay to not be okay with how someone else has treated you, but if you can just own your stuff as well as acknowledging what, you haven't liked externally, it creates balance and compassion. And that's when we can forgive and release.
Yeah, and I think that's the for me to forgive, forgiving my mum, and I absolutely can now. Yeah. And when a marriage breaks up, you can harbour a lot of anger and resentment towards your ex-partner for various reasons. And I think once you can start to say that, look at the gifts in it, look at what it's done. My marriage breakup has made me a much more resilient woman. Yeah. I think my business is stronger than ever because I had to help my team survive. My team was threatened when my marriage broke up with financial issues, and I thought, I'm not going to no longer be paying this group of wonderful people whose livelihoods depend on this business. Yeah. It made me so determined to be even more successful. So good. How can I not be grateful for that?
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Anyway.
Oh, that's beautiful. So rounding off, do you have a couple of tips that you want to share with everybody of what helps you to be resilient?
I think there's a few things. I think for me, it's about firstly tenacity and having that I'm not giving up. Yeah. And then when you are faced with a challenge, I think the negative person would say, "Oh, this is a problem. Oh, what am I going to do?" And they'll just give up. Yeah. Whereas a resilient person would say, "This is a solution that hasn't been born yet." And I always have said, a problem is a solution that's about to happen.
I love that.
So just say, and so I think they're the two main things. I think having that grittiness, and looking at a problem in a different perspective.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah. There is actually a book called Grit, by the way. I've forgotten the author's name, but and I haven't read it yet. I do have it in my pile of books that I haven't read yet. And we all have that within us. It's sometimes not cracked open yet until there's a life event or a change you have to go through that helps us to discover what we're made of. And that's why I'm so passionate about mastering change, is because if you can make it easier to get through the change. You can open up parts of you that are ready to be awakened. And that's when you realize what you can really do.
Well, I'm happier at 57. I have to say I'm happier than I've been ever in my whole life.
Yes.
And I just feel like I am just in a really good place. My friends are, my kids are,
Yeah.
my Synergie family is. I've got a
Yeah.
wonderful relationship.
Great.
And it's all got its challenges. It's not, it's not always perfect, but I tell you what, I think I've kind of, I wish I had the emotional maturity I have now in my 20s and 30s,
Of
because I would
course.
have smashed it back then. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, I
hindsight,
think
hey?
you did smash it anyway. I think you absolutely have smashed it. Now, you've written a book
Oh, thank you.
called Skin Formation.
Yes,
I love it. And it's
yes.
so important.
Yeah.
It's a really important book where you expose misinformation and confusion surrounding many cosmetic ingredients, and you debunk current skin mythology. This is so important. This is why I love what you do. You really do care about what goes into the ingredients. Tell me all about why
Oh,
you wrote
yes.
Skin Formation.
Well, I believe there's a lot of white noise out there, and there's a lot of stuff, particularly online.
Yeah.
And I don't believe consumers were given credit for their incredible intelligence. And they are able to cut through the hype, but they can't do it without the right information.
Yeah.
So, as a scientist and as a woman, and primarily my readers are women, but they're also men, I wanted to cut through all that white noise and that hype and give them just the facts. And if people have knowledge, that gives them the power to make better, more informed decisions. And the book is about clean science. It's about choosing ingredients that will work for you.
Yeah.
It's about going to the supermarket, picking up a product and deciphering the label yourself,
Yeah.
and not being told by somebody in a beautiful white coat in a department store what they need.
Yeah.
I want the consumers to be empowered. And it's also, again, it's about confidence, because if at the end of the book you make one small change that makes you hold your shoulders back further, then I've done my job.
Yeah. I
It's
love
really
it.
important.
Well, I'm going to put in the show notes all the links back to all the wonderful things that you do, synergieskin.com to check out your products, and Terri
Okay.
Vinson.com, which is your personal website, isn't it? Can you buy the book from there?
Yes, you can buy the book from there, Amanda, but you can also go onto Booktopia.
Yep.
And also Amazon. So it's available. And Leaf Bookstore in Ashburton also has it. So there's a lot of local retailers, Dimmicks. So it's all around a very exciting
Awesome.
time.
And if anyone out there wants to try Terri's beautiful skin care range, your team have arranged a coupon code RESILIENCE to get 10% off.
Yeah, fantastic.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today, Terri. That was such a beautiful
Thanks, Amanda.
conversation. You've been through so much, and yet you're so positive, and you feel. I just feel elevated in your presence, in your company, and you're someone that many people automatically want to help, and it's like a magnet. It feels like it's a magnet, and you're so beautiful inside and out, and I'm so glad that I met you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm so glad I met you, and let's stay in touch. I know COVID's made us a bit distant over the months, but
Something to look forward to.
I'm just, and I love what you're doing too. It's just so important. We just need to elevate everybody in whatever way we can. You are amazing doing it through your means, and I've got my means too. But let's just make everybody the best version of themselves they can.
Power of collaboration.
All right.
I agree.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, everybody, no matter what you are going through, you can overcome it and discover what you are made of. I'll see you guys next week. See you, Terri.
Bye, Amanda. Thank you.